What if I told you the future of Star Wars was riding on one tiny green character and a bounty hunter who barely shows his face? After 7 years without a Star Wars movie in theaters, Lucasfilm is finally back with The Mandalorian and Grogu. And this isn't just another space adventure. This movie is Disney's biggest test yet. Can streaming characters actually become blockbuster movie stars? Or has the galaxy far, far away lost its cinematic magic? Today, we're breaking down everything. The behind-the-scenes drama, the insane production secrets, the massive risks Disney took, the hidden lore connections, and why this movie could completely shape the future of Star Wars. And trust me, some of the decisions they made are absolutely wild. Before we jump in, comment below. Did Grogu save Star Wars, or is Disney relying too much on nostalgia? I genuinely want to know where fans stand on this. So here's what makes this movie fascinating. The Mandalorian and Grogu was never supposed to be a movie. Originally, this story was planned as The Mandalorian Season 4 for Disney+. But then, Hollywood strikes hit. Production schedules collapsed. Streaming profits started shrinking. And Disney realized something huge. They needed Star Wars back in theaters fast. So Jon Favreau and Dave Filoni completely reworked the project into a full theatrical film. And suddenly, a streaming side story became a $165 million blockbuster. That's a massive gamble. Because now Disney had to answer a terrifying question. Can audiences be convinced to pay theater prices for characters they've been watching at home for years? That's the real experiment behind this movie.
One thing critics immediately noticed, this movie looks more cinematic than most recent Star Wars projects, and that was intentional. Favreau reportedly pushed hard for practical effects, giant physical sets, and real vehicles instead of relying only on digital environments. They literally built a full-scale AT-AT walker for one major action sequence. That's classic old-school Star Wars energy. And yes, they still use the famous volume technology, those giant LED walls powered by Unreal Engine, but this time they blended it with massive real-world builds to make everything feel more tangible. And honestly, fans have been begging for that tactile original trilogy feeling to return. Disney didn't just make a movie. They turned this film into an entire ecosystem. The same digital assets used to create the movie were also shared with Disney Imagineering. Meaning, the planets, vehicles, and environments from the film were immediately turned into a new mission for the Millennium Falcon Smuggler's Run ride at Disney Parks. That's insane synergy. You're not just watching the movie anymore. You're walking inside it, playing it, experiencing it physically. This is basically Disney building a real-time, interconnected Star Wars universe across movies, streaming, games, and theme parks simultaneously. And according to Favreau, they're just scratching the surface.
Now let's talk about one of the best decisions Lucasfilm made, bringing back Ludwig Göransson. If you watched the early seasons of The Mandalorian, you already know how iconic that soundtrack became. The Western-style whistles, the synth-heavy atmosphere, that lonely gunslinger vibe. But for the movie, Göransson went big. Huge orchestras, massive IMAX-scale themes, music designed specifically for giant theater speakers. And according to critics, the score is one of the strongest parts of the entire film. Some reviewers even said the music makes the movie feel more epic than the story itself. That's how powerful the soundtrack is. This movie has a massive challenge. Most casual viewers skipped huge chunks of the Disney Plus shows, and Lucasfilm created one of the most confusing continuity problems imaginable. Remember the emotional ending of Mandalorian Season 2? Grogu leaves with Luke Skywalker. Huge moment. Then suddenly in Season 3, he's just back. Why? Because their reunion happened in an entirely different show, The Book of Boba Fett. A lot of casual fans had no idea, and Lucasfilm clearly realized that was a disaster for mainstream audiences. So this movie tries very hard to function as a standalone adventure. You don't need a PhD in Star Wars lore to follow it. But longtime fans, they'll definitely appreciate the deeper connections.
This movie pulls characters from every corner of Star Wars history, including one of the weirdest comeback stories ever, Rotta the Hutt. Yes, Jabba's son. The same little baby Hutt kidnapped during the Clone Wars movie back in 2008, he's now grown up and apparently absolutely jacked. Seriously, instead of a lazy crime lord, Rotta is portrayed as this muscular gladiator warrior, and fans are already losing their minds over it. Jeremy Allen White voices him, and apparently he didn't even realize how important the character was when he first signed on. That's hilarious. Quick question for the hardcore fans, what animated character do you want to see make the jump into live action next? There's still so many possibilities. Drop your pick in the comments.
Now, surprisingly, this movie keeps things pretty simple. Instead of galaxy-ending stakes, it focuses on something much smaller and more personal. Din Djarin and Grogu are now basically freelance operatives working for the New Republic, hunting Imperial warlords across the galaxy. The opening action scene reportedly takes place on a snow planet that heavily resembles Hoth. AT-AT walkers, tauntauns, classic Empire imagery. And Din apparently goes full Batman mode inside an Imperial walker during one brutal combat sequence. That scene alone is already getting a ton of praise. But the real emotional core of the movie is Grogu's evolution. This isn't Baby Yoda anymore. This is Grogu becoming a true Mandalorian apprentice, and eventually, the protector instead of the protected. That's the heart of the entire story. The third act completely flips the relationship dynamic we've watched since season 1. Din gets captured. Grogu has to save him. And honestly, that's kind of brilliant storytelling. Because the entire franchise has been about Din protecting this child. Now the child finally becomes strong enough to protect his father. That emotional evolution is what gives the movie its real weight. Not giant explosions, not nostalgia, the relationship. And that's why audiences continue connecting with these characters. Okay, this part is unbelievable. Martin Scorsese has a cameo. Yes, that Martin Scorsese. The same guy who famously criticized franchise films and said Marvel movies were basically theme park rides is now appearing in a literal Disney Star Wars blockbuster connected to theme park attractions. You can't make this up. It's honestly one of the funniest examples of Hollywood irony in years. Here's where things get complicated. Critics are very divided. Most people agree on a few things. The Din and Grogu relationship still works. The music is incredible, the practical effects look fantastic. But a lot of reviewers feel the story itself is too small for theaters. Some critics basically described it as a really expensive Disney Plus episode. And financially, the projections are interesting too. The opening weekend estimates are significantly lower than previous Disney-era Star Wars films. Now, obviously, those numbers are still huge compared to normal movies, but compared to The Force Awakens, it's not even close. And that raises a massive industry question. Has streaming permanently changed how audiences value franchise storytelling? Because once fans get used to seeing characters at home, convincing them to buy IMAX tickets becomes much harder. Honestly, this film feels less like a grand finale and more like a bridge, a transition point. Lucasfilm is clearly using this movie to reconnect theatrical Star Wars with the streaming universe before larger crossover events happen later, especially with Dave Filoni building toward the eventual Thrawn storyline. And by the end of the movie, Din and Grogu are positioned perfectly for future adventures. Still independent, still roaming the galaxy, still flexible enough to appear anywhere in the growing Mandoverse. So while this movie tells a complete story, it's also laying foundations for the next era of Star Wars. At the end of the day, The Mandalorian and Grogu might be one of the most important Star Wars projects ever made. Not because it reinvents the franchise, but because it tests whether modern blockbuster franchises can successfully merge streaming storytelling with theatrical spectacle. And honestly, that's the real battle happening here. Not Jedi versus Sith, but streaming versus cinema. And Grogu somehow ended up at the center of it all. If you enjoyed this breakdown, hit that like button, subscribe for more deep dive movie analysis, and turn on notifications because we've got more massive franchise breakdowns coming very soon. And before you go, one final question. Can Star Wars ever truly recapture the magic of the original trilogy in theaters, or has the franchise permanently changed? I'll see you in the next one.